Welcome back. This is episode 95 of the Veterinary Business Video Show. In today's show we'll hear about the correlation between the Pareto Principle and the business of dental practice. We'll look at the UK small animal practice numbers update, and we'll hear from Warren Buffett about the best advice he received from his father. We'll see why vigorous argument could be the making of your business, hear some tips about handling the peaks and troughs of demand in practice, and I'll offer you my quick business tip for this episode. I'm John Sheridan, and this is the show that helps practice owners, managers and clinicians just like you to build your successful practice into a great business. Joseph Duran was a distinguished management consultant in the United States who proposed that the law of the vital few, which states that for many events roughly 80% of the output comes from 20% of the input, should be renamed the Pareto Principle after the Italian economist who observed in 1906 that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population, and that apparently 20% of the pea pods in his garden contained 80% of the peas. Today the Pareto Principle is used in business as a common rule of thumb, that for example 80% of your sales comes from 20% of your clients, or that 20% of your staff create 80% of your HR problems. And I suspect that there are many similar examples in veterinary practice. Here's a clip from Michael Schuster, who identifies the business correlation between the Pareto Principle and dental practice.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is exactly 80-20, but it could be 75-25, it could be 90-10, it could be 70-30. Do you get the drift of this? That there's a trivial many and there's a vital few, okay? And this is in all the universe. By the way, those of you that know about this, it's called the bell curve, okay? You know, it's the bell curve, okay? And it's, again, a life-changing principle that we apply to everything that we do in our life and in our practice. 80-20 with procedures, 80-20 with patients, 80-20 with referral doctors, 80-20 with time, 80-20 with staff, 80-20. Okay? And when you begin to realize the importance of it, okay, so when you're in a certain type of practice, more is better. In another type of practice, more is worse. Okay? And we'll look at that together. So the principle is not only linked to profits and production, but it's also linked to getting more out of life. There's a guy that I studied with named Rockshotten. He started the Omega School in New York. He's a physician, an MD. He wrote a book called Time Shifting. And he really talked about the 80-20, and he talked about it this way. He talked about islands of happiness. So you take that, so to speak, island of whatever that is, whatever really turns your crank, you know, gets you excited, gets you motivated, makes you feel great, and you just keep expanding it. What is a life like when you 80-20 in reverse? You're too busy, you're too frazzled, you're production centered, you're not profit centered, your life's a mess, you never have enough time for anybody, don't have time for your kids, you don't have time to do anything. That's what it's like when you 80-20 in reverse, because you haven't established what your priorities are. You haven't said what matters most.
Now for the numbers update for this episode. The Management Analysis Index provided by AT Veterinary Systems is a quarterly benchmarking service designed to identify business opportunities by monitoring a number of key performance indicators. Today we'll look at some of the KPIs for small animal practice in the UK and see how they've changed over the 12 months from January 2012 to January 2013.
The revenue per vet full-time equivalent at $228,215, down 1%. Client spend per pet in the year, £160.58, down 3.3%. Client spend per visit, £42.40, up 0.6%. Percentage of dogs over 2 vaccinated, 58.8%, down 0.7%. Percentage of cats over 2 vaccinated, 49.5%, down 2.1%. Percentage of dogs microchipped, 51.2%, up 11%. Percentage of cats microchipped at 37.2%, up 8%. Percentage of dogs insured 29.5%, up 0.2%. Percentage of cats insured 14.9%, down 2.7%. Percentage of dogs wormed 46.1%, up 1.1%. Percentage of cats wormed 45.7%, up 0.7%. Percentage of dogs having recently received flea treatment 33.5%, up 0.9%. And percentage of cats having recently received flea treatment 34.6%, up 5.2%.
Now let's see who's on the video show Soapbox for this episode. Warren Buffett is widely considered as one of the most successful investors of the 20th century and consistently ranked among the world's wealthiest people. I imagine that his business and financial advice has been sought by many would-be investors and entrepreneurs over the years. But here's an interesting clip in which Warren Buffett reveals two pieces of valuable advice he received, one from his father.
But what's the best advice that you've ever received?
Well, I received it in a variety of forms, particularly from my father when I was very young. But I mean, he basically, I think, taught me how to live. Not that I did it perfectly or anything like that. But I mean, he was giving me lessons, but he wasn't doing it by preaching to me. He was doing it by example. But basically, well, the biggest lesson, in a sense, I got is the power of unconditional love. I mean, I think there is no power on earth like unconditional love. And I think that if you offer that to your child, I mean, you're 90% of the way home. And there may be days when you don't feel like it. It's not uncritical love. That's a different animal. But to know you always can come back. I mean, that is huge in life. That takes you a long, long way. And I would say that every parent out there that can extend that to their child at a very young age, it's going to make for a better human being.
And you felt like you got that kind of unconditional love from your dad?
I absolutely did, yeah.
That is a powerful thing.
It is a powerful thing.
So that was the best, if not advice, gift you've ever received. But what's the worst advice you've ever given?
Well, I'm sure I've given a lot of terrible advice, but I'm not sure what it would be. Generally speaking, I've known what good advice is. The fellow you know, Tom Murphy, 40 years ago, said to me one day, he said, "Never forget, Warren, you can tell a guy to go to hell tomorrow. You don't give up the right. So just, keep your mouth shut today and see if you feel the same way tomorrow." That's terrific advice. I don't know how many problems that saved me. You haven't lost it. You don't have to stay up all night worrying about the fact you didn't tell it to him. You can always tell it to him tomorrow.
The best advice my father gave me was that most people at the end of their lives have some regrets, and that most of them relate to the things they didn't do when they had the opportunity rather than the things that they did do. Conflict in the workplace caused perhaps by an individual with a grievance, problem between an employee and a manager, or conflict between two employees may well be a matter of regret and can certainly get in the way of customer service and make a business less productive. Most people instinctively try to avoid conflict, but here's a clip in which Margaret Heffernan suggests that good disagreement is central to progress and that the best businesses allow their people to disagree and find ways to get the best out of each other.
And when our carbon-copied questionnaire started to come back, one thing and one thing only jumped out with a statistical clarity of a kind that most scientists can only dream of. By a rate of 2 to 1, the children who had died had had mothers who had been x-rayed when pregnant. Now that finding flew in the face of conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom held that everything was safe up to a point, a threshold. It flew in the face of conventional wisdom, which was huge enthusiasm for the cool new technology of that age, which was the X-ray machine. And it flew in the face of doctors' idea of themselves, which was as people who helped patients, they didn't harm them. Nevertheless, Alice Stewart rushed to publish her preliminary findings in The Lancet in 1956. People got very excited. There was talk of the Nobel Prize. And Alice really was in a big hurry to try to study all the cases of childhood cancer she could find before they disappeared. In fact, she need not have hurried. It was fully 25 years before the British and American medical establishments abandoned the practice of X-raying pregnant women. The data was out there, it was open, it was freely available, but nobody wanted to know. A child a week was dying, but nothing changed. Openness alone can't drive change. So for 25 years, Alice Stewart had a very big fight on her hands. So how did she know that she was right? Well, she had a fantastic model for thinking. She worked with a statistician named George Neal, and George was pretty much everything that Alice wasn't. So Alice was very outgoing and sociable, and George was a recluse. Alice was very warm, very empathetic with her patients. George, frankly, preferred numbers to people. But he said this fantastic thing about their working relationship. He said, "My job is to prove Dr. Stewart wrong." He actively sought disconfirmation, different ways of looking at her models, at her statistics, different ways of crunching the data in order to disprove her. He saw his job as creating conflict around her theories, because it was only by not being able to prove that she was wrong that George could give Alice the confidence she needed to know that she was right.
Now for my quick business tip for this episode. My memory of practice as an employee clinician was a working lifestyle of peaks and troughs. In farm practice, it was very early start, charging around the country all morning to fit in all the farm visits, leisurely early afternoons, then long evening surgeries handling the endless queue of small animal clients and their pets. The same ebb and flow was true in small animal practice, and emergencies always seemed to turn up at the height of the peaks and never when we were ready and waiting when business was quiet. Here's a clip in which Gina Toman offers some scheduling secrets to deal with the peaks and troughs and to bring calm to your appointment workflow.
Everyone has had those days at their practice where everything seems perfect and the schedule is running smoothly. And then there are those days that seem like chaos. The lobby is full, clients are waiting, the doctors are running behind, and the staff are at a standstill. In my experience, if you're having more days like the second scenario that I've described, then you most likely have a problem with your appointment and scheduling workflow. To avoid this common practice disaster, let me offer you the following suggestions. Try scheduling everything. We not only schedule medical and wellness appointments, we also schedule surgery check-ins, drop-offs, blood draws, single vaccines, and even nail trims. Try scheduling all medical and wellness appointments for 30 minutes. This will allow you enough time to accomplish everything during that appointment. Review the schedule at least 3 times daily. And for us at Seaside Animal Care, we have the rule of 3. The rule of 3 is that everyone on our team must know the next 3 appointments at any given time. Multilateral communication is also important, especially between front and back staff. This involves communicating scheduled changes as well as if there's anyone waiting. Book your schedule based on the number of staff and doctors, and even the number of rooms that you have in your practice. A great tip is having the employee schedule at every workstation that will be used for scheduling. Train your staff to also recognize appointment priorities, and this involves knowing the difference between perceived emergencies and actual emergencies. Getting your schedule in check is a great way for improving the overall efficiency of your staff and ultimately your practice.
So what's my quick business tip? Well, it's this. Demand for veterinary services isn't steady, and part of the job is to accept that emergencies happen and have to be dealt with. The key task for management is to find ways to deal with the peaks and fill up the troughs so that as far as possible all the practice assets, especially your human resources, are utilised efficiently, effectively and economically. So have another look at Gina's suggestions and see how they might be applied to your practice. Well, that's about it for now. I'm John Sheridan, and this is the Veterinary Business Video Show. See you next time.